Hey everybody, full year. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 16th to the 22nd of February 2026. So this week, not actually a whole lot going in for our updates. Replaced has been delayed again, only this time it's maybe about a month or so. So Sadcat Studios have delayed Replaced a couple of times. It was originally going to be like 2024. They pushed it out to 2025. Then it was delayed again in August. They pushed it out to this year, spring 2026, and now they've delayed it again, but not quite as much. So it's new release date April 14th, previous release date March 12th, so it's about a month or so. And developers talked about the Steam demo that was out for the game currently, and are using some of the feedback from the demo to make some final tweaks to the game. So yeah, I mean, the game is looking really nice, but this many delays, and especially having yes, it's good that they're taking feedback from the demo, but the idea that this close to release, they're still tweaking it. Now, having said that, and knowing about some elements of game development, you are kind of still working on the game right up until release. As much as like a lot of developers and a lot of publishers, when they say they're delaying the game, it's, oh, we need to do some polish and yada 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 and kind of thing. Not really. They're kind of still working on the game proper. So this could be this case here. As part of their announcement, they did make it clear that it's a small team. This is our first game. We want to make sure it does well and so on. And sure, but it is a little concerning. But yeah, we'll find out in an extra month now in April. Xbox Game Pass, some new games here as well. So Death Howl is a kind of deck building roguelike Souls game, if you like. So it's a very hard kind of combat thing, but it's a card based type gameplay. Oh wow, I really shouldn't have done this after work. Anyway, from what I've seen, it looks pretty interesting, and I'm pretty sure that's a new release. College football. Okay, sure. The Witcher 3 has been out for a good while. I believe this is the full edition, has all the DLC, all of that. It's a very good game. Trading card game, card shop. That's good. They have card in the title twice. Right, that looks like shit. Anyway, Dice Millions, or Dice Million, I don't know what that is. I feel like it's Balatro, but it's Dice. Towerborn, I think, is kind of like a Castle Crashers kind of thing. Final Fantasy 3, the pixel remaster of Final Fantasy 3. We played it on the channel. I think it was okay. I don't quite remember. We played a few of those back to back, and to be honest, they kind of... It's why I've taken such a big break between 5 and 6. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been doing very well. It's very well received critically, commercially, and now if you have Game Pass, you can grab it yourself. Over on the Epic Games Store, the free game this week is Return to Ash, which I'm not sure what kind of game it is. It looks like it's a graphic novel kind of thing. Hospital was empty, quiet, brighter than usual, like waking up on a snow day, but I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel much of anything. It's okay, so it sounds like they're already dead. Return to Ash is a narrative-driven visual novel focusing on emotional storytelling and relationship building. Determine how the story ends, explore a mysterious afterlife. Yeah, they're dead, okay. Voyage amongst others trapped in purgatory, face impossible torturous trials from a masked being who calls himself Death. Okay, look, it sounds like Danganronpa, to be honest, but you're already dead. Anyway, going on actually right now, if you're watching this video as it goes up, it's already started. Steam Next Fest, 23rd of February to the 2nd of March, so it's a week of demos from either games coming out soon or games that won't be out for a very long time. One of them is Replaced. There's quite a few games here that are on my Games of 2026 list. If you saw any of the games on that seemed interesting, you might find a demo for it over on Steam. I'm going to try to get some videos of those games up and get some like impressions and see if they should still be on my games in 2026 list. Anyway, those are some games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? We have Demon Tides, which is a sequel to Demon Turf. This is a kind of old school platformer, or maybe not old school because it is kind of open. So it's maybe a little bit closer to something like Odyssey. What's kind of interesting about this game is you can kind of customize your movement abilities. So how you jump, how you dash, how you double jump, this kind of stuff. And you do that by like collecting different enemies, different monsters that you encounter during the game, and use their abilities to like mix and match. And there's lots of them, so you can like customize it as much as you feel like doing. Demon Turf was kind of niche, but I think people who played it seem to quite enjoy it. And Demon Tides seems like it's more of that. So hopefully it turns out well. Paranormasight was somewhat shadow dropped on the most recent Nintendo Direct. It's a sequel to Paranormasight 1 something. Like the seven somethings of Hongo. I forget what the full title is. This one has something to do with mermaids, but if you've played the previous Paranormasight games, you'll know it's gonna be fucked up in some way. Basically, it is a somewhat of like a detective visual novel kind of thing, but for the most part, it's kind of fucked up. Avowed is not a new game, but it is a previously Xbox exclusive that is now on PlayStation, continuing that trend and continuing the downfall of Xbox, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Avowed version that's come out on PlayStation and is also an update on PC and Xbox is adding a lot of new things, a lot of new weapon types, new character customization things. You can like new races and stuff like that. Lots of new things basically. So potentially an excuse to play it again if you've already played it, and for PlayStation owners who don't have a decent PC, an opportunity to play the game itself. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games and the video game industry. So, as I was saying, the downfall of Xbox. Microsoft gaming head Phil Spencer is retiring, replaced by an AI executive who promises no soulless AI slop. Okay, so this was announced pretty late on Friday. We're getting a little bit more news about it now on Monday, Tuesday, and I will talk about that on the next update. So I'm really just talking about the announcement itself here. So CEO Phil Spencer worked for Xbox for like 25 years, something like that. Sorry, worked for Microsoft for about 25 years. Not sure how long he had been with Xbox itself, but he was its CEO for like 10 years. Shortly after the Xbox One launched, and Don Matrick was like, yeah, it's an always online console, and if you don't want it to be always online, you can buy a 360 instead. And then he got the boot pretty quick after saying that shit. Phil Spencer took over and implemented Game Pass effectively, and trying to bring people back that Don Matrick lost, because they certainly lost a lot of loyalty. A lot of people jumped to PlayStation 4 at that point, and arguably never went back. Anyway, including him, Xbox president Sarah Bond has also resigned, effective immediately. Well, that's not true. She's hanging around for a little bit. And then president of Microsoft's core AI product, Asha Sharma, is taking over for Phil. That doesn't sound very good now, does it? Anyway, Phil is stepping down as Microsoft Games CEO on Monday, so he's already stepped down, but is staying on in an advisory role. Sarah Bond is allegedly also staying on in an advisory role. So she's current president of Microsoft's core AI product. She has also previously been the chief operating officer, COO of Instacart, and was vice president of Meta's Metaverse. Yeah. Cool. Oh, wait, no. Just vice president of Meta. The whole thing. Even worse. Somehow it's worse. Anyway. There's some corporate bullshit here about how it's a great thing, and it's great that Phil is stepping down, and it's great that the person most likely to succeed him resigned instead of staying on. Anyway, as part of this transition, Sarah Bond has decided to leave Microsoft to begin a new chapter. It sounds like she was passed over and decided to leave. Or was asked to leave. Debatable. Allegedly, Phil had made his decision to retire a year ago. I was thinking, is there anything obvious that happened a year ago that would make it true? I know we heard about the 30% thing from Microsoft where they're like, yeah, you need to start making crazy amounts of profit, basically. I can't think of anything very obvious that would have happened a year ago. Anyway, according to Ashish Sharma, we must have great games beloved by players before we do anything. Okay. Could start so far. We will take risks. No, you won't. No, you won't. Anyway, we will invent new business models and new ways to play. New business. It's fun. It's interesting that she said business models first, and not new ways to play first. This is a memo to Xbox employees, so this isn't a memo to investors. So again, leading with the business models part is a little bit telling. We will build a shared platform and tools that empower developers and players to create and share their own stories. Now, that could be corporate bullshit, or that could be AI platform stuff. A generative AI thing to let players make their own games, which will never work and will never happen, but it's not going to stop Microsoft from trying. As monetization and AI evolve and influence this future, citation needed, we will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop. Bullshit. Games are and always will be art crafted by humans and created with the most innovative technology provided by us. Sure, Microsoft won't chase short-term goals. A growth-poisoned company will not chase short-term goals. Now, some people are latching onto this soulless AI slop thing. And what I would say is Microsoft does not consider its AI slop. So her saying that it won't be filled with AI slop, and coming from a hater like me of generative AI, you could twist that to say no AI, because I think all AI is AI slop. So we won't flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop means they won't use it at all. The way I'm reading it is Microsoft doesn't think its AI is AI slop. So any AI it makes is fine, or any AI it generates, we'll say, because it doesn't make anything, is totally fine, because theirs isn't slop. I disagree. Disrespectfully disagree. Anyway, so that's the news. Phil is resigning. Phil is retiring. Sarah Bond has resigned, and a former AI executive is taking over. So this is from Kotaku. That's it. I'm calling it. Xbox is dead. Time of death, February 20th. So this article, it's not very long, but I do encourage you to read through it. But it basically summarizes some of the steps that have been taken in the past that have basically started and are continuing and arguably have now completed the death of Xbox. And I largely agree with it. I did say at the time that when Microsoft acquired Activision, and when it was agreed upon that Microsoft were going to want to see a return on that $70 billion, and they were going to want to see a return on it quickly because they're growth fucking short-term shitheads. And I think the purchase was stupid in the first place, but now that it had been done, the idea that they were just going to make back that $70 billion quickly was never happening. I think it's also important to note that Xbox historically didn't make a lot of money for Microsoft. Sometimes, I wouldn't say wasted, lost money. Or we'll say its revenue, or its costs exceeded its revenue. in many quarters, as particularly when they were doing their acquisitions. And was never really a big moneymaker for them. A lot of it was just to get people into the Microsoft ecosystem. And then that's where they would make even more money because they'd make the money on software sales. When they bought Activision, that was effectively the last big acquisition they made, and it was a very, very big acquisition. They spent something like 80 to 85 billion on acquisitions, and 70 of that was just Activision. That's insane. That's an insane amount of money. And what did they really get for it? Call of Duty isn't doing the numbers that it used to do. World of Warcraft does have a steady subscription income, I suppose. Diablo 4 didn't exactly set the world on fire. Activision decided not to keep making Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. They've thrown everybody into the Call of Duty mines and are arguably not getting a return on that. So the idea that they would somehow make a return on that 70 billion and they would make a return on it quickly wasn't ever really going to happen, but it was expected of them. And we did hear that there was a lot of pressure on them to start making back that money quickly. And that's also when we did start seeing the pivot to making, decentralizing the Xbox console itself and just turning into, everything is an Xbox. This is an Xbox. You might remember that marketing thing where they would say, like, your phone can stream Xbox games, or you can play Xbox games on your PC, or you can play it on a smart TV, and so on. That you don't need the console anymore. It's also when we started seeing the price of Game Pass go up. It's also when we started seeing formerly Xbox exclusive games showing up on other platforms, showing up on PlayStation. Even more recently, Halo is being ported to PlayStation, which is arguably the big red fucking alert siren of this is a bad thing for Xbox. But anyway, this article goes through a lot of that kind of step by step and gives you a little bit more in it, a little bit more of the behind the scenes thing, but not to be I told you so, but and that you still can't really say I told you so because Xbox is still alive, but feel like we're not going to see whatever the next generation of the console is, or if we do, it'll be the last one. Anyway, speaking of also terrible decisions, Sony PlayStation is shutting down Bluepoint Games. What the fuck are you doing? Anyway, Bluepoint Games has been instrumental in enhancing past titles for current gen consoles. So if you're not familiar with Bluepoint, they did the remake for Demon's Souls, PS5. They did the remake for Shadow of the Colossus, which is a very, very good remake. They worked on the Uncharted the Nathan Drake collection, which was a remaster of a lot of the Uncharted games. And have done lots and lots of porting. They were very much a porting studio, and they were very, very good at it. Sony bought them 2021. I think it was right after they had made Demon's Souls, or right after they had released Demon's Souls, and then they didn't make anything for 5 years. And now Sony are shutting them down. Not spinning them off, let them go back to being their own studio. No, shut them down. Cool. Bluepoint Games is an incredibly talented team, and their technical expertise has delivered exceptional experiences for the PlayStation community. We thank them for their passion, creativity, and craftsmanship, and we're shutting them down. Okay. Is there any more than that? So, not really. So there isn't really a whole lot more to that story. So we're talking about 70 employees out of a total of 80. I guess a few are hanging around for some reason. I don't know. Maybe they're in management or something. But for the vast majority of the studio is being shit canned. Bluepoint themselves did say in 2024 that they were working on an original IP. It would have been the first time they were making their own game. It was also revealed that they were at one point working on a God of War live service game. You may recall Jim Ryan, villain of the show, mandated that basically every studio be working on a live service game. Live service was the future. Everything has to be a live service. Everything has to be games as a service. That has turned out super well for Sony, obviously, because every single one of them they've released has flopped, as far as I can remember. Have any of them done well? I'm struggling to think. Helldivers, that's about it, and that's not even them. They published it, but they didn't develop it. I think they only partially helped publish that as well, and they definitely didn't go hard on the marketing. I don't think they were expecting Helldivers 2 to actually do well. I think about their other games since they acquired Bungie. Destiny 2, has that really taken off? No. Marathon, about to come out soon, has a great like pall over it. Some people, certainly from the announcement of Sony shutting down Bluepoint Games, I've seen a lot of vitriol targeted at Marathon specifically. This kind of games as a service, live service push from Sony, Marathon is arguably being seen as its flag bearer in a way. And I have seen like social media responses to some of their marketing, some of Marathon's videos, some of Marathon's social media posts and stuff like that. And a lot of the replies are fuck you, more or less, for shutting down Bluepoint Games. For a long time, the rumor was Bluepoint Games were working on Bloodborne. They were working on a Bloodborne remake. That was never corroborated. Not sure if it was ever true. Their own correspondence was, no, we're working on our own IP, and we're also working on a God of War live service. That is obviously not going to happen anymore. And very much Sony we do know that Sony has cancelled vast majority of their live service projects, but it does mean, since they had every studio working on one, that every studio has now effectively had to start again on a new project, which is why you haven't seen many PS5 releases from Sony. This is arguably the reason why. We've seen basically nothing. There's another article, I think it's from Kotaku again, where they were going over the acquisitions that Sony has made in the halfway through the PS4, PS5 era, and how they have turned out. And a lot of them have either put out a game and then were immediately cancelled, or immediately closed down, rather, not cancelled. Concord, Fireworks Studios. Fire Sprite were a VR studio. They put out the Horizon VR game, and then were shut down. Bluepoint didn't get to make a game and were shut down. Nixes, who did like kind of PC ports, I think are just doing support work now. I'm sure there are others. There's only kind of two that have done well. It's Housemarque, Returnal. So Returnal did well, and it looks like Saros is positioned to do pretty well as well. And Insomniac. And it's a little bit difficult to say like Insomniac wasn't already a Sony first party, because they didn't exactly put out many games that weren't in some way almost PlayStation exclusives. You know, because Insomniac are the Ratchet and Clank people. And then before that, were they Jack and Daxter? No, sorry, Jack and Daxter's Naughty Dog. Yeah, Insomniac were Ratchet and Clank, and then Spider-Man obviously has done very, very well for them. But it does seem that unless you're making a Marvel game, you're not really doing well for Sony right now as an acquisition. Anyway, their first-party studios, the Horizon guys, Guerrilla, are working on a live service game and have partnered with another studio to make another Horizon live service game. The God of War guys, it's kind of ironic. God of War guys are working on a God of War trilogy remake when they had a remake studio right fucking here. But it is like, it's indicative of modern Sony. Like modern Sony has very much issued the kind of thinking that made it what it was, that got a lot of fans. You know, partnering with a lot of good studios, making small games in between their big games, and like promoting third-party studios and really helping out with them. And they just seem to just not give a shit. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Speaking of games being shut down. XCOM designer Jake Solomon reveals Life Sims plus The Truman Show game while announcing the studio's closure. So Midsummer Studios opened May 2024. They were going to be working on a Life Sim game that was effectively going to try to compete with The Sims. There really is no competitor with The Sims right now, and a lot of developers and a lot of studios that have attempted to do so have not succeeded. There's Inzoi, I think, at the moment, that's currently in early access and haven't really heard it's setting the world on fire or anything. Anyway, Jake Solomon confirmed the news in social media post while at the same time shutting down the studio. However, it's maybe like it was okay. I don't think we may have missed anything here because it was going to be a build your own TV series project with a lot of generative AI in it. I think like nothing of value may have been lost here. So from the sounds of it, it did sound like it was going to be that Silent Hill live video thing that was also generative AI. I forget what it's called now. I feel like it started with an O. It was Silent Hill and then something that starts with an O. But it was all, you voted on what the next scene was going to be, and then it generated the scene. And I think the only real difference here is that it wasn't going to be a collective thing. You effectively just made it yourself. But like, you can do that in your head. Get an imagination and you can just do that yourself. I don't think they really needed a game for that. Anyway, that's not going anywhere. But speaking of other games being shut down, Ubisoft confirms layoffs at Toronto studio, but insists Splinter Cell's remake is still coming. I don't know, it's a lot of people to lose. Anyway, publisher confirms 40 employees at one of its largest studios. This studio would have been responsible for things like Watch Dogs Legion, Far Cry 6, so pretty big games for Ubisoft. The decision was not taken lightly and does not in any way reflect the talents, dedication, or contributions of the individuals affected. Yeah, sure it doesn't. Anyway, Ubisoft continuing to... I just confuse? I'm hurt myself in my confusion? Or it hurts itself in its confusion? I really don't get what they're doing. Or I do, if I'm being very cynical, I do feel like they're positioning themselves to be bought, but... like the idea that they need to lay off 40 people and cut costs of 200 million while at the same time making good profit. Like there's something is not adding up here. Anyway, if the Ubisoft Splinter Cell remake is actually going to be happening or not, I guess we'll see. It has been in development for a good long while. It's possible it's close to the end of development and they can afford to lose 40 people, but still, you'd kind of want to keep them around for Splinter Cell 2 remake. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so this is kind of a series of short articles, but they kind of all paint a not particularly great picture for hardware going forward. So Steam Deck OLED, stock affected by component shortages. Stock may be intermittently unavailable in some regions due to the ongoing RAM shortage. If you're not familiar with what the ongoing RAM shortage is, basically a bunch of RAM manufacturers have pre-sold a bunch of RAM that has not been made yet to go into machines that have not been made yet to go into data centers that have not been made yet and is being bought with money that does not exist. It's all debt and it's all stock, and it's just a continuation of the AI bubble inflation thing. But basically, a bunch of generative AI shitheads are buying up all the RAM. And therefore, there's a shortage of RAM for things like the Steam Deck, but for things like your next PC, or for things like the next PlayStation, or whatever that will be, because also Sony is considering holding back the PlayStation 6 until 2028 or 2029. This is according to Bloomberg, and it cites the same thing. The shortage of memory will constrain production in the future rather. Nintendo is also looking to raise the price of Switch 2. They've already raised the price of it. Again, traditionally, hardware prices went down over the years. Not anymore. Lenovo CEO saying to investors, the structural imbalance between supply and demand is not simply a short-term fluctuation. This will be ongoing under the assumption that generative AI is here to stay and will be a big deal and is effectively just all tech is going to be doing. In the future, that means it's going to need a lot of RAM. That means it's going to need a lot of GPUs, and that means consumer RAM and GPUs will be increasingly either very expensive or it's just simply unavailable. There's other knock-on effects here. Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight has had its recommended RAM cut in half. So this is optimizing the game now to run on weaker hardware. And this is also something I did say that because of these shortages, because of GPU shortages, because of RAM shortages and so on, that video game developers are going to have to get used to the idea that players are going to increasingly have weaker machines for longer. You know, like the PlayStation 5 with Sony is going to be around much longer than they thought it was going to be. People aren't going to be upgrading their PCs as often, and so on. So any new game that comes out is going to have to take into account that many of their players won't be able to run it at state-of-the-art levels. I mean, that was the case anyway, but the margin is now even bigger, and will continue to get bigger as RAM becomes unavailable or pricing people out of the market. Now, you might think that this is only going to affect video game stuff. It's not. Or it might only going to affect computers. It's not. Basically, anything that has any kind of computation going on uses RAM. Yes, it's a computer. Those are kind of more obvious things. Your phone has RAM in it. If you have a smartwatch, your smartwatch has RAM in it. If you have a thermostat, your thermostat has RAM in it. If you have a car that has a digital display, it has RAM in it. The fucking parking meter, if it's digital, has RAM in it. Like everything. Anything that has any kind of computational thing going on. Because that's where the memory is stored. Hard drives also are seeing an uptick in unavailability. Or a downtick in availability? Whatever way you want to look at it. Hard drives are also becoming more difficult to find. Any ones that are out there are becoming increasing in price. The price of memory is going up. So not just RAM. The price of long-term memory also going up. The price of GPUs is going up. The availability of all of those things is going down. This is a big problem. It's not just a big problem for video games. Massive problem for video games. But this is a huge problem for just daily life. We have to think about people who might have been considering replacing or updating their machines. If you were thinking about updating machines in your office, updating your machines of wherever you work, that's going to have to be put off. Or you're going to have to learn to make do with what you have. You might want to look into Linux at this point to just optimize the machine itself. Is it a pain in the ass? It's not as bad as you think, but there's certainly some niceties that you may have gotten used to by having Mac OS or Windows. Yes, Linux is there's a learning curve to it, sure, but it is generally does have your machine will run better. But I do think we are going to be seeing people hanging on to their machines longer. But there's another knock-on effect here that I don't think too many people have thought of, which is what does happen for consumers, for customers, for the regular person when RAM, memory, GPUs, all of that stuff, when it all becomes just unavailable, either through just zero stock or through the price is just so high that most people just can't afford it. When a personal computer becomes like it was a luxury anyway, but when it becomes like a very much an elite kind of luxury to the point that it will be extremely rare for people to have one. Hey, cloud and streaming platforms. Hey, let's lock you in even further to the tech monopoly, to the walled garden. Now, if you want to play video games, you'll have to lock yourself into Game Pass streaming. Or Nvidia's GeForce thing or Sony's remote play stuff or that kind of thing. So now they own you even further. You absolutely will not own anything. Even if you have buy the physical version, now you don't have a physical thing to play it on. This is even more pricing people out of the hobby. Because as much as you might say, okay, yeah, we'll all pivot to streaming. One, streaming doesn't really work that great outside of major US cities where the infrastructure can handle it. And even then, if your service provider is particularly shit, still may not be able to handle that kind of bandwidth. And not only that, kind of bandwidth is expensive. Is it as expensive as a brand new PC? No, but at least if you buy the brand new PC, you don't have to buy a brand new PC every time you want to play a video game. On top of that, the streaming platforms themselves will also be dealing with unavailability of new GPUs, of memory, of RAM, and so on. So the price of those streaming services will have to go up to accommodate their increased costs. You may get the situation where there's only going to be a handful of streaming services that can manage it. Big players, Microsoft, for instance, could probably do it. Does Sony have the money to float having all of their customers suddenly go into streaming? Don't think so. Don't think so. Right now, it's a supplemental thing. But if it transpires that the entire video game playing base, the whole thing, which is millions of people, suddenly have to pivot to streaming and not having a local machine to play it off. They do not have the infrastructure for that. That's a lot of build out of data centers. It's a lot of build out of custom server racks that are going to be taken over by generative AI guys right now. I'm telling you, as much as I get on here and I hate on generative AI, and I do, because I think it is cancer. I think it is asbestos for the tech industry. But the sooner this bubble bursts, the better for everybody. And not just for like video games, but for just regular person tech, for any kind of computational system, like point of sale displays, things like you being able to tap your card to pay for something, like that needs RAM. Your kid's tablet that you put in front of them instead of parenting them, that also requires RAM. Like any of these number of things. This is bad, is what I'm saying. It's very, very bad. Anyway. But wait, the thing that's going to kill the industry, allegedly, but not for the reason they're saying. I mean, generative AI might kill the industry, but not because it replaces people. It's because it just makes the whole thing inviable, whatever. Unity says its AI tech will soon be able to prompt full casual games into existence. I mean, maybe. Will those games be any good? No. They're all, I mean, fucking casual games are already shit anyway. So yeah, this is Unity talking to, again, prospective investors. You absolutely have to take this with a huge grain of salt. But the idea is you can conversationally talk to this new Unity AI thing and say, hey, make me Candy Crush, basically. AI-driven authoring is our second major area of focus for 2026. What was their first major area of focus? Ads. Embedding ads into games, basically. I thought I had highlights on this article. I did. Its AI offering will soon be capable of prompting entire games into being. Capable doesn't mean they'll be good. Doesn't mean they'll be stable. Doesn't mean they'll even be allowed on the respective app stores. Unity CEO Matthew Bromberg said the company is preparing to unveil a new Unity AI beta at GDC, of all places to unveil it. The Developers Conference. Okay, that will negate the need for coding. That will go over well. There will eventually be tens of millions of more people creating interactive entertainment driven by AI-enabled development tools. Now, one, no, there won't. But two, if that were true, there is already a visibility problem on most gaming sales platforms. If you go onto Steam, it's like, what is it, 10,000 or something crazy like that? a week games are added to it. Most of them are shit. Most of them are, asset flips or extremely low effort things, and every now and again there's something actually very good in there, but finding it without some kind of curation going on, it's unlikely you'll manage that. If you look at the eShop, there's so many hentai jigsaw puzzle games. There's so fucking many of them. Sony has a real bad problem with AI thumbnails on a lot of their stores, or on the store rather. A lot of the games are using AI art to promote themselves, and then the games themselves are asset flips and this kind of thing. I've not been on the Xbox store. I imagine it has a similar problem. And what have you. GOG are a little bit better at curating, but I'm sure they also have a slop issue. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys heard that. Somebody fell over. All right, anyway. So yeah, it's using OpenAI and Llama, which means, are they really doing anything different, or is it just a wrapper over these two? They're allegedly using a bunch of other ones that they're training with, but at the same time, there's nothing really stopping you from doing that yourself. And what I will say is, where are all of the AI games? Are any of them taking over? Are any of them standing out? Are any of them even working? No. But Unity is putting all of its effort into it. All of its effort into this and ads. What used to be, and was at one time, the most used game developing platform, is doing its best to alienate the people who use it. Anyway, speaking of gaming platforms having problems, game development platforms having problems, Indie Game Engine Manager says getting bombarded with AI slop is increasingly draining and demoralizing. So this is Godot, or the Godot engine, which at one point was a kind of niche video game development platform. One big benefit for Godot is that it's open source. So you know what's in it. Unlike Unity, unlike Unreal, which are proprietary engines, you don't necessarily know what's in the software itself. Whereas Godot, you do. You can audit the code, see if there's any problems with it. And since it's open source, you can make your own fork of it too. If you don't know what that means, it means you make your own copy of it, and then you can fuck with it and do whatever you want with it. Anyway, they're getting a never-ending wave of AI slop pull requests. Now again, pull requests, if you're not familiar, you don't work in software engineering, a pull request is basically me saying, I have made a change to the program, and I would like you to add it to the main code base so that when people update it, they'll get my changes, because I've done a thing that's cool. Or I've done a thing that fixes a bug, or I've done a thing that changes the color of a thing, or whatever. And this is pretty standard practice in software engineering. Here's a bug. I am going to make a copy of the code base. I'm going to fix the bug, and then we're going to take my fix and put it into the main code. Because you want to make a copy because people might already be using this one. It might be a live software, it might be a website that you're fixing, and you can't. Fixing it live is extremely dangerous. You don't do that. You fix an offline version of it, you make sure it works, you go through pull request or peer review, which is other developers look at your code and say that's fine, or this is going to cause some other issue, you need to fix this first, or yes, the code works, but it's not in a way that people will be able to understand it, or yes, it works, but it doesn't match our manual for how things are meant to be written, and so on. There's a lot goes into it. And basically the issue they're finding here is that people are using generative AI to create these code changes, and then using generative AI to create the pull requests, and then the people who manage the Godot engine, who are actual software developers, have to go into these fucking things, read them and go, this is fucking AI. No, but there's so many of them, and they are such a small team, and they are human beings. Takes a while. And not only does it take a while, it means they are missing pull requests that are actually valid and will actually improve the software. So changes often make no sense. Descriptions are extremely verbose. Users don't understand their own changes. It's a total shit show. Users don't understand their own changes means the whole thing was vibe coded. It means either this isn't a software developer or it's a software developer who just vibe coded it and didn't read it and is just submitting it as is. Either of those have no business working on an open source software. Descriptions being extremely verbose means it takes ages to read it. It takes ages to read it, and understanding what it says, again, this is extra time. This is extra time being taken away from pull requests that will be valid. And changes often making no sense. Again, they're just not writing up their PR properly. Anyway, this has forced us to second guess every single pull request from new contributors multiple times per day. Maintainers are spending a lot of time assisting new contributors to help them get PRs in a mergeable state. I don't know how long we can keep it going. It really is just exhausting to watch all this play out, and GitHub promoting this is not fighting it. So this is from Chet Falazek, who worked on a lot of Valve titles. Portal 2, probably in particular, is one he's probably best known for. This is really just exhausting to watch all this play out, and GitHub promoting it is not fighting it. So GitHub provides the opportunity for people to vibe code. Now, on its platform, GitHub is often where a lot of programs host their source code because it's available in a lot of different places. And before the generative AI shit, it had a pretty good suite of services. And it's where Godot is hosted in the first place. So it provides you an ability to make a fork of Godot or clone into the repository, which basically means you copy the source code down onto your local machine. And then you can vibe code a change to it, whatever that change is. And then you can vibe code a pull request and push that up to the remote repository. So back up to GitHub. And that will make a pull request. And at no point did you review any of that. What would have taken you maybe 20 minutes to do is now taking a person who has to review it and make sure you haven't fucked up the code base. They're having to check it and check it and check it. And it's not just one person. Multiple people are having to do this. You've just created an astronomical amount of work because you don't know what you're doing. And GitHub is letting this happen. And GitHub aren't the only people doing it. Microsoft are doing it. Google are doing it. Bitbucket are doing it. It feels bad. Moving on. Speaking about feeling bad and more generative AI things. So we're moving into community things here. This isn't necessarily the video game industry itself, but things that do affect the video game community. So TikTok refuses to axe racist AI-generated ads for Finji games. So Finji, you're probably more familiar with the games they've published rather than the games they developed themselves. They've published Night in the Woods and Tunic. And they are currently working on a game called Usual June. This is the key art for it. I'm not sure what kind of game Usual June is. But, hang on. Let me get my highlights back. Anyway, so they've been dealing with a slew of racist and sexist AI-generated TikTok advertisements for its games that it did not produce. So Finji does use TikTok's advertising platform. And one thing that is in TikTok's advertising platform is this thing called a smart creative, which basically is AI-generated ads. Finji deliberately turned off every setting that uses it, and yes, they're still getting generative AI ads for their game, and not only that, they are not particularly flattering. Its market team has turned off the platform's AI features, saying that they are all the way off. However, they've been notified of advertisements by several of their fans. These posts appear to come from the original Finji account, so the way they're appearing on TikTok, you would assume this is officially from Finji. This is official first-party advertisement that they've okayed all of this. So they're taking this key art and they're basically modifying it in a way that comes across as quite racist and quite sexist. Anyway, the AI has modified this image apparently and extends the image to show the lower part of the player character June, displaying her in a more sexualized fashion, wearing a bikini bottom, thigh-high boots, evoking a racist stereotype of black women. That's not the only thing it does. It does a bunch of other things as well. These AI images have not been reproduced for this article. Just didn't think it was a good thing to be doing. Anyway, TikTok has acknowledged the inappropriate ads, but just won't refuse them. Refuses to remove them. Anyway, TikTok customer support representatives who at first acknowledged the existence of the ads, then denied the existence of the ads, then acknowledged them again. However, Finji have received no follow-up from any of TikTok supervisors. Now, this flip-flopping sounds like a generative AI. It sounds like their customer support representative is filtered through an LLM. This going backwards and forwards thing. Now, it could be that it's actually a real person and they're just flip-flopping. Maybe. But it does sound like a generative AI to me. Anyway, and this receiving no follow from the supervisor, it's entirely possible that the LLM just dropped it. Because again, they don't work. They don't do, even if they say they're doing something, that doesn't mean they're actually doing it. You have to assume everything that comes from a generative AI is a lie. All of it. So, Saltzman, what's the full guy's name? So Becca Saltzman, CEO of Finji, basically had this to say about it. Does TikTok want me to be grateful for the mistreatment of my company and our game? Based on the wild response to the weeks of customer service correspondence we have received, I think this is their stance and take on their obvious offensive and racist technology and process and how they secretly use it on the assets of their paying clients without consent or knowledge. So they stated that the moderation team had already provided their final finding and actions on this matter, which basically means they're not planning to take it down. This was a broader automated initiative. Sounds like it was a test from TikTok's advertising end of things. The fact that you're able to turn off all of the stuff and yet it still happens is kind of an issue. The fact that this test is still attributed to the official account is also a problem. And the fact that it's just straight up racist. Yes, it's a problem, and it is a problem is well known about generative AI because of what it's trained on. But wait, it gets worse. Well, it doesn't get worse for this, but it just, in general, just gets worse. Reddit bans Pragmata sub for being full of creeps sexualizing the game's robot kid. So Pragmata, you're playing this guy, and you're followed around by Diana, who is a robot, but is certainly designed to evoke a young child. Anyway, reactions to the infantile appearance of Pragmata's android protagonist Diana on the r/Pragmata subreddit have prompted one of its moderators to publicly step down from their role, with them citing the overwhelming influx of pedo shit as the cause. Another Pragmata community has been shut down altogether by Reddit over inappropriate posts. So, this has become such a problem that the Pragmata subreddit has splintered into 3 other Pragmata subreddits. One of them is the one that was already there, the main subreddit. The one this mod has stepped down from because of the pedo shit. Then there's Pragmata Safe for Work, which is what you might expect it is. It is basically what this should be. Anyway, it's the Pragmata subreddit without any of the pedo shit. This is an attempt at building up a sub that isn't plastered with pedophile dog whistles. There's a lot of thing where they're talking about how cute she is. And then there's Pragmata _, which is the reverse of Pragmata Safe for Work. It's just pedo. Anyway. And I don't want you saying, oh, she's a robot, so it doesn't count. Oh, she's actually... This anime child is actually a 1,000-year-old dragon in baby form. No, fuck off. Anyway. Rule 4 of Reddit is basically, you know, child sex material. In one post, Pragmata Safe for Work moderator stated that none of their proposals to be more strict were ever taken seriously. Several mods with feeds full of this lewd lolly shit, so a lot of Pragmata's moderators are very much all in on it. I should say r/Pragmata's moderators, which is not an official thing. Let's be clear, Capcom has no ownership of this whatsoever. But this one is kind of funny. The user also claimed that another moderator who is still part of the moderation team on the subreddit had a post manually removed by Reddit's main staff because it featured obscene artwork of Diana. You know it's bad when mods post CP and Reddit itself has to step in, which is kind of, yeah. You have to think of how many subreddits there are. And this is Reddit. The big overarching moderation team manages to find this and be like, what the fuck? Now, I think part of that is that briefly Pragmata was on the homepage of Reddit, and I think it was one of those posts too. So the reason he's stepping down is basically they had attempted to address the recent toxicity by banning users who post sexualized content of Diana, removing any sexualized comments, and so on. This is what led to the creation of the other Pragmata thing, which is basically just all of that. The contents of this subreddit were immediately condemned. And as far as I am aware now, Pragmata _, the shit one, is fully banned from Reddit at this point. Subreddit has been banned earlier today. Rule 4 was the reason given. This is not the first time the Pragmata community has drawn ire for this kind of thing. Stuff on the Steam page for when the game was announced also had this kind of shit going on. So that's cool. I'm glad we have those people in the gaming community. Anyway, we'll leave, I guess we'll leave Demon Tides to play on the back. Anyway, that was your news, as terrible as it was, for the 16th to the 22nd of February 2026. Again, not a whole lot on the update side of things. Quite a few terrible things on the industry side of things. What's exactly going to happen with Xbox, not entirely sure. I do feel like this is just another harbinger of the end of Xbox. And I do, as I said, feel that acquiring Activision was the beginning of it. That was when they started it. They paid too much money for it. And then Microsoft wants a return, and they couldn't get a return quickly, so they had to start doing stupid shit, like increasing the price of Game Pass, watering down the value of Game Pass, pushing their games onto other platforms, decentralizing the Xbox itself, just making it a everything is an Xbox kind of shit. That was all in an effort to try to just push the numbers up, push the subscription numbers up, because that was all that was making the money at the time. And arguably still is all that's making the money. Anyway, Sony shuttering Bluepoint, again, super disappointing. I feel exactly the same way I felt when they shut down Japan Studio, because it's just, again, just modern Sony not realizing why they were in the position they're in. Going all in on that live service stuff and having it not work out, and the people who had nothing to do with it are feeling the brunt of it. And now at a time when they could really use them, God of War remake and so on, and people clamoring for more games, they could be porting and remaking, remastering games from Sony's history, or partnering with third-party publishers to like have a temporary exclusive or something and just get more games out for PlayStation. Because right now, I think you give out it now, actually, Bluepoint are the only reason to have a PS5. Because Demon's Souls is currently exclusive. It's not on PC. All of Sony's other first-party, previously exclusives are now on PC, or are slowly making their way over to it. You know, Last of Us is on PC, the Spider-Man games are on PC, the Horizon games are on PC, Death Stranding is on PC, the Ghost of Tsushima I think is on PC. I'm not sure about Ghost of Yotei, but I think it's on its way at least. Returnal is on PC again. Like, it is. Demon's Souls is the only one that's not. Actually, their Shadow of the Colossus remake I don't think is on PC either. So, I don't think it is. I'm not sure. So yeah, those developers, the only real reason to actually own a PS5 and not own a PC or a PS4 Pro or something. Now, granted, you would need a pretty powerful PC to get the most out of it, sure, but what a way to reward them. Anyway, the RAM shortage, coupled with the GPU shortage, coupled with the hard drive memory shortage, and so on, it's bad times. Bad times ahead. It's going to be a while before this fixes itself. And if the same 6 companies keep passing around the same $100 billion between themselves, this could go on for a long time. This could result in even further erosion of you owning the things that you buy. Further pushing you into subscriptions, further pushing you into streaming, further pushing you into cloud software. It's not good, basically. It's not good. And I don't really want to talk about the Pragmata thing again because it felt gross. Anyway, I'm going to head off. I'm really hoping there's better news next week. I don't think there will be. But the week after that is GDC. I'm hoping Unity get booed out of the building. Probably not, but it would be funny if they were. And we might see some game announcements, opening game night and that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day. Keep a lookout for Steam Next Fest on the channel, but do play the demos yourself as well, because I mightn't get around to it. All right, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day. Talk to you guys later.